Chicago looked beautiful only from a distance. From inside, the city felt exhausted. Its streets carried the weight of people surviving paycheck to paycheck, while wealthy men drank beneath crystal chandeliers, pretending the world belonged only to them. Evelyn Carter understood that reality better than most. At 24 years old, she balanced medical school during the day, late-night restaurant shifts after classes, and endless hospital visits for her mother in between. Sleep had become a luxury she no longer remembered clearly. The cold November wind followed her through downtown Chicago as she hurried toward Belladonna Noir, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. The towering black glass building stood like a monument to power. Politicians, celebrities, judges, and billionaires disappeared inside its private floors every night, while ordinary people passed by pretending not to notice the armed security waiting near the entrance. Evelyn hated working there, but hospital bills did not care about dignity. The moment she entered through the employee hallway, the atmosphere wrapped around her like smoke. Velvet walls reflected dim golden lights, while classical music echoed softly across the restaurant's upper levels. Expensive perfume mixed with cigar smoke and aged whiskey. Every inch of Belladonna Noir screamed wealth designed to intimidate people who had never belonged near it. The workers rarely spoke loudly inside the restaurant. Fear had a way of controlling people more effectively than rules ever could. Evelyn adjusted the sleeve of her black uniform and tied back her dark hair while studying the event list for the evening. Private political dinner. Restricted upper level. VIP guests only. That usually meant dangerous people pretending to be respectable. A nervous manager rushed through the hallway warning staff repeatedly about mistakes. His voice trembled every time he repeated one particular name. Dante Moretti. Even hearing it shifted the mood around the room. Some employees avoided eye contact immediately. Others lowered their heads. A dishwasher quietly crossed himself under his breath before returning to work. Evelyn had worked at Belladonna Noir for nearly 8 months, yet she had never actually seen Dante Moretti in person before. Only stories, whispered rumors. A mafia don powerful enough to control judges, police commissioners, construction unions, and entire neighborhoods without ever raising his voice publicly. Some claimed he once destroyed a rival family in a single night. Others said politicians feared him more than federal investigations. Nobody agreed on what was true, but everyone agreed on one thing. Dante Moretti was dangerous. The restaurant transformed completely after sunset. Black SUVs lined the street outside, while security teams scanned every entrance. Wealthy elites entered wearing million-dollar smiles and carrying corruption beneath tailored suits. Evelyn moved silently between tables balancing silver trays, while wealthy guests ignored her existence completely. Men discussed elections beside illegal business deals. Women mocked poorer neighborhoods while wearing diamonds worth more than most families earned in years. Class hatred dripped from every conversation. One elderly investor openly complained about people from neighborhoods like hers ruining Chicago. Another laughed about immigrant workers being cheap enough to replace any time. Evelyn kept her expression calm. Humiliation became easier to survive when repeated long enough. Still, something about that night felt wrong. Security guards kept checking their watches nervously. Managers whispered through earpieces. Even the musicians appeared tense. The entire restaurant seemed to be waiting for someone. Then the elevators opened. Silence spread almost instantly. Dante Moretti stepped onto the private floor, surrounded by armed men dressed in black suits. He moved calmly through the restaurant without acknowledging anyone directly, but fear followed him like a shadow. Politicians stood straighter. Billionaires stopped speaking mid-sentence. Even security guards avoided looking him in the eye. Evelyn understood the rumors immediately. Dante did not need to threaten people. His presence alone controlled the room. He looked younger than she expected. Early 30s perhaps. Dark tailored suit. Sharp features. Cold gray eyes carrying exhaustion hidden beneath absolute control. There was no arrogance in the way he walked. Only quiet authority. That somehow felt worse. Evelyn lowered her gaze and continued serving drinks near the private balcony section, where Dante and several political figures gathered around a long marble table. Fragments of conversation drifted toward her while she poured wine carefully. Money transfers, ports, missing evidence, federal investigations. One senator mentioned moving the girls before authorities discovered the warehouse connections. Evelyn's stomach tightened. Another man laughed quietly about police reports disappearing for the right price. She froze for half a second too long. One of the men noticed her immediately. The conversation stopped. A wave of tension spread across the table. Evelyn apologized softly before stepping away, heart pounding hard enough to hurt. She understood instantly that she had heard something she was never supposed to hear. The intelligent decision would have been leaving quietly. So she tried. 20 minutes later, Evelyn slipped through the employee hallway toward the rear exit. Her breathing stayed uneven as she searched her bag for her keys. She only needed to get home. Nothing else mattered. But before she reached the door, several security guards blocked the hallway calmly, not aggressively. That made it worse. One guard touched his earpiece before stepping aside slowly, and Dante Moretti appeared at the opposite end of the corridor. The hallway suddenly felt too small, too quiet. Evelyn's pulse accelerated as Dante approached her without visible anger. His expression remained unreadable, almost calm, yet something deeply unsettling hid beneath it. "You're leaving early," he said quietly. His voice carried no emotion. Evelyn forced herself to remain composed. "My shift ended." Dante's eyes studied her carefully, not like a man admiring beauty, more like someone searching for answers inside her face. That frightened her more than obvious violence would have. "I heard part of the conversation upstairs," she admitted carefully, "but I'm not interested in problems." One security guard shifted nervously nearby. Dante remained silent for several seconds before glancing toward the exit behind her. Then his gaze returned to Evelyn. "You should still be careful walking alone tonight." The statement sounded less like advice and more like a warning. Evelyn stepped toward the door again, desperate to leave the suffocating tension behind. That was when Dante grabbed her wrist. The movement was fast enough to shock everyone nearby. The hallway fell completely silent, because nobody in Chicago had ever seen Dante Moretti look afraid before. And in that moment, fear flashed visibly across his face. Not fear of her, fear for her. Evelyn stared at him, confused by the sudden emotional crack in his controlled mask. His grip never tightened painfully, but he refused to let go immediately. The guards looked stunned. One manager nearly dropped a tray nearby. Dante slowly released her wrist after realizing everyone was watching. "You can't leave alone tonight," he said quietly. Evelyn's heartbeat thundered painfully. "Why?" For the first time, uncertainty appeared inside Dante's eyes. That tiny moment changed everything, because Evelyn suddenly realized he was not watching her like a criminal protecting secrets. He was watching her like someone terrified history was repeating itself. The realization unsettled her deeply. "What happened upstairs?" she whispered. Dante looked away briefly toward the dark restaurant floor beyond the hallway. Politicians laughed softly in the distance while expensive glasses clinked beneath golden lights. The entire building continued functioning normally while danger quietly spread beneath it. Finally, Dante answered. "There are people in this city who destroy anyone connected to certain information." His voice remained calm. Too calm. Evelyn tried pulling herself emotionally back under control. "Then why involve me?" Dante studied her face again. "Because your father already was." The word struck her like ice water. Evelyn's father had died years earlier in what police labeled a construction accident. She barely remembered details anymore beyond hospital machines and unpaid bills destroying her family afterward. "What does my father have to do with you?" she asked carefully. Dante did not answer directly. Instead, he motioned toward one of the guards. "Get a car ready." Evelyn stepped backward instantly. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Fear finally returned fully. Dante noticed immediately. Something unreadable crossed his expression again. Regret, perhaps. "You misunderstand me," he said softly. "If certain people upstairs realize who you are connected to, you will not survive the night." The statement sounded horrifyingly sincere. Evelyn's instinct screamed at her to run anyway. But another part of her noticed something impossible to ignore. The guards surrounding Dante feared him. Yet Dante himself looked afraid of something else entirely. That emotional contradiction unsettled her more deeply than threats ever could. Minutes later, She found herself seated inside the back of a black SUV moving through downtown Chicago, while armed vehicles followed behind them. Rain streaked across tinted windows as skyscraper lights blurred outside. Nobody spoke. Evelyn stared at Dante sitting across from her inside the dim vehicle. He remained calm outwardly, yet exhaustion lingered beneath his expression constantly. For the first time all night, she noticed something else too. Sadness, not weakness, grief, as though he had already lost something important long before meeting her. The convoy finally arrived at a towering penthouse building overlooking Lake Michigan. Security teams opened private entrances immediately. Elevators locked automatically after they entered. Everything about Dante's world felt controlled, prepared, paranoid. When the elevator doors opened onto the penthouse floor, Evelyn stepped out slowly before freezing completely. A large framed photograph stood against the hallway wall beside Dante's private office. Inside the photograph stood her late father. Beside him was a smiling teenage girl. And standing behind them was a younger version of Dante Moretti. The girl's face carried flowers in her hands and sunlight in her smile. But someone had drawn a black line across the picture, like a memorial. Evelyn turned toward Dante slowly as cold dread spread through her chest. Dante stared at the photograph with visible pain darkening his expression. Then one of his security men entered the hallway, holding a thin file nervously. "The archives confirmed it," the guard said carefully. "Evelyn Carter's father helped hide evidence connected to your sister's murder years ago." And suddenly the penthouse no longer felt safe for either of them. The penthouse overlooked Chicago like a kingdom separated from ordinary humanity. From 70 floors above the city, the streets below looked distant and powerless. Endless light stretched across the skyline, while black clouds rolled over Lake Michigan like silent warnings. Expensive marble floors reflected soft golden lighting. Massive glass walls revealed the sleeping city beneath. Everything inside Dante Moretti's private residence screamed luxury powerful enough to erase guilt itself. Yet the deeper Evelyn Carter walked into the penthouse, the more it felt like a prison carefully disguised as paradise. The doors locked automatically behind her, not loudly, softly. That somehow made it worse. 2 armed guards remained outside the hallway, while another security team quietly monitored surveillance screens near the private elevator. Nobody explained anything directly to Evelyn. Nobody threatened her openly either. But she quickly realized something terrifying. Nobody inside the penthouse expected her to leave. The revelation settled heavily into her chest during the first morning after arriving there. She woke inside a guest suite larger than her entire apartment back home. Silk curtains covered massive windows overlooking downtown Chicago. Designer clothing waited neatly folded beside the bed. Fresh coffee stood untouched on a marble counter. Someone had prepared everything for her, without asking. The controlled perfection unsettled her deeply. Evelyn moved cautiously through the silent penthouse, while hidden cameras followed her from nearly every hallway corner. At first, she thought paranoia was overwhelming her. Then she noticed tiny blinking security lights hidden inside artwork frames, smoke detectors, and ceiling fixtures. The entire residence watched its occupants constantly. Every movement, every conversation, every emotion. Dante Moretti did not trust the world around him enough to ever stop watching it. That truth became clearer with each passing hour. He rarely raised his voice, rarely showed anger openly, yet the entire staff behaved like frightened shadows around him. Housekeepers lowered their heads when he entered rooms. Security guards stiffened instantly whenever he appeared unexpectedly. Even powerful politicians arriving from midnight meetings looked nervous stepping into his office. Fear controlled the penthouse more effectively than weapons ever could. Evelyn first saw Dante again late that evening. He stood near the massive windows overlooking the city, while rain struck the glass softly behind him. Dark suit, calm posture, hands folded behind his back. From a distance, he almost looked peaceful, but exhaustion lived inside him constantly. She noticed it immediately now, the sleeplessness beneath his eyes, the grief hidden beneath discipline. "You should eat," he said quietly without turning around. Evelyn remained near the doorway, cautiously. "Am I a guest here or a hostage?" Dante finally faced her. His expression stayed unreadable. That depends on whether the people hunting you arrive first. The answer sent cold tension through her stomach. He approached slowly, not threateningly, but the emotional pressure surrounding him remained overwhelming. Dante carried authority so naturally that entire rooms adjusted themselves around his presence. "I never asked to become involved in this," Evelyn whispered. "I know. Then why keep me here?" Something flickered briefly inside his expression. Guilt, perhaps. "Because your father died protecting secrets powerful people would kill to bury." The statement deepened the confusion already consuming her. Evelyn wanted answers desperately, yet every truth seemed connected to darker questions waiting underneath. Dante noticed her fear immediately. Oddly, he looked disturbed by it. Not irritated, disturbed. That contradiction kept unsettling her emotionally. The following days passed beneath constant surveillance and rising paranoia. Security inside the penthouse intensified after several armed vehicles were spotted near the building repeatedly. Dante's organization responded aggressively. Guards doubled overnight. Hallways became restricted. Elevators locked automatically after sunset. Something dangerous was approaching, and everyone inside the penthouse knew it. Evelyn spent most afternoons wandering carefully through the enormous residence while trying to understand the world surrounding Dante Moretti. Restricted doors lined several hallways. Hidden offices remained locked behind fingerprint scanners. Armed men constantly moved through communication rooms monitoring political offices, financial records, and private security feeds across Chicago. The penthouse functioned less like a home and more like the control center of an invisible empire. One afternoon, Evelyn encountered Vanessa DeMarco for the first time. The woman entered the penthouse wearing elegance like armor. Platinum hair framed a beautiful but emotionally cold face. Wealth followed her effortlessly. So did cruelty. Vanessa smiled at Evelyn immediately, but the smile never reached her eyes. "So this is the girl Dante suddenly cares about," Vanessa said softly. The insult hid beneath politeness expertly. Evelyn remained cautious. "I'm only staying temporarily." Vanessa's expression sharpened slightly. Women who stay near Dante rarely leave unchanged. The statement carried deeper meaning than simple jealousy. Over the next several days, Vanessa quietly poisoned the atmosphere around Evelyn. She spread whispers among wealthy social circles visiting the penthouse. Politicians' wives mocked Evelyn's background openly during private dinners. Elite guests treated her like an outsider contaminating their world. One wealthy investor even asked if Dante had rescued another girl from the poor neighborhoods. The humiliation burned quietly. Class hatred surrounded these people naturally. To them, Evelyn represented something offensive, ordinary survival, existing too close to their corruption. Dante noticed everything. He never publicly defended her, but the people insulting Evelyn usually disappeared from the penthouse shortly afterward. That frightened everyone even more, especially Vanessa. Meanwhile, rumors surrounding Dante's murdered younger sister continued haunting the residents constantly. Staff members avoided discussing her directly, yet traces of her existence remained everywhere. Old piano music sometimes echoed through empty hallways late at night. Certain rooms stayed permanently locked. One bodyguard crossed himself every time he passed a specific corridor near Dante's office. Eventually, curiosity overcame fear. Evelyn investigated. Late one night, while security teams monitored activity downstairs, she slipped quietly through restricted hallways until reaching a locked white door near the far end of the penthouse. Unlike the others, this door lacked visible security scanners. Only a small silver cross hung above it. The handle turned easily. Inside, the room felt frozen in time. Soft white curtains moved gently near open windows overlooking the city. Shelves carried old books, ballet shoes, framed photographs, and dried flowers untouched by dust. Candles surrounded a grand piano resting near the center of the room. A memorial, not a bedroom. Evelyn stepped forward slowly as realization settled heavily over her. This had belonged to Dante's younger sister. The atmosphere inside the room differed completely from the rest of the penthouse. No coldness, no intimidation, only grief preserved carefully for years. Then Evelyn noticed something else. Dante stood silently near the windows. She had not heard him enter. For several long seconds, neither spoke. And for the first time since meeting him, Evelyn saw Dante Moretti emotionally unguarded. His face looked exhausted there. Human. The terrifying mafia don who controlled judges and politicians suddenly resembled a broken older brother unable to escape old memories. Evelyn realized something deeply unsettling in that moment. The only place Dante ever seemed emotionally calm was inside the memorial room dedicated to his dead sister. That realization changed how she viewed him completely. She loved this room, Dante said quietly. His voice carried distant pain. Evelyn studied the photographs surrounding the piano carefully. The girl looked young, warm, full of life untouched by violence. What happened to her? Evelyn asked softly. Dante remained silent for a long time. Finally he answered. She trusted the wrong people. The simplicity of the statement somehow made it more horrifying. Before Evelyn could respond, one of Dante's security men entered the room nervously. "There's movement downstairs," the guard warned quietly. Several unfamiliar vehicles. Dante's expression hardened instantly. The emotional vulnerability disappeared like it had never existed. He became the mafia don again within seconds. Cold, controlled, dangerous. After he left, Evelyn remained alone inside the memorial room while rain struck the windows outside. Something about the photographs kept pulling her attention repeatedly toward one particular frame near the piano. She stepped closer slowly and froze. Inside the photograph stood Dante's younger sister smiling beside several people during what appeared to be a charity event years earlier. One of those people was Evelyn's father. Shock tightened her chest instantly. She grabbed the frame carefully with trembling hands while studying the image closer. Her father looked younger, nervous perhaps, but undeniably connected to Dante's sister days before her disappearance. A folded note slipped from behind the frame accidentally and fell onto the floor. Evelyn picked it up carefully. The paper contained only a date and an address written hurriedly beside one sentence. "If anything happens to me, trust Daniel Carter," her father's name. Suddenly footsteps echoed rapidly through the hallway outside. Security alarms activated somewhere deeper inside the penthouse. Voices shouted through communication devices. And as Evelyn stared at the hidden photograph in disbelief, she realized her father had not simply known Dante's murdered sister. He had been close enough for her to trust him before she vanished forever. The photograph changed everything Evelyn Carter thought she understood about Dante Moretti. For days afterward, the image haunted her constantly. Her father standing beside Dante's younger sister no longer felt like coincidence. The expression on her father's face inside that photograph carried fear hidden beneath forced politeness, as if he already understood danger surrounded everyone in the room. And now Evelyn understood something far worse. Her father had not simply crossed paths with the Moretti empire. He had been trapped inside it. Rain continued falling over Chicago during the following week, while tension spread throughout Dante's penthouse like invisible poison. Security teams moved through the halls more aggressively. Surveillance monitors remained active 24 hours a day. Armed guards doubled around elevators and private entrances. Something dangerous was approaching the empire from inside, not outside. That realization disturbed Dante more than open warfare ever could. Evelyn noticed it immediately. The calm control that usually defined him had started cracking beneath pressure. Sleepless nights darkened his eyes. His movements became sharper, more watchful. He trusted fewer people each passing day, including members of his own organization. Paranoia had infected the entire penthouse, and for the first time, Evelyn began understanding why. Late one evening, she wandered quietly through Dante's private office while he attended meetings downstairs with politicians and business investors connected to his criminal network. The office itself resembled a war room, disguised as luxury. Financial reports covered enormous desks. Digital surveillance feeds monitored city streets, ports, hotels, and warehouses across Chicago. Every inch of the empire operated through information, control, fear. But hidden beneath the polished criminal structure, Evelyn discovered something much darker. Locked inside a hidden cabinet beneath Dante's desk were financial records connected to offshore accounts, trafficking operations, and political donations linked to federal judges and senators. Some files detailed payments moving through fake charities before disappearing into shell corporations overseas. Others contained photographs, young women, teenagers, missing persons reports, victims. Evelyn's stomach tightened painfully while flipping through the documents. Most of the girls came from poor neighborhoods, immigrant families, broken homes, communities wealthy politicians ignored unless elections approached. Many disappeared without investigations ever reaching national media. Money had buried them quietly. Power had erased them completely. And suddenly Evelyn understood the true horror surrounding the Moretti Empire. The mafia had not created the corruption alone. Politicians, judges, police commissioners, business leaders. They had all helped build it together. The realization shook her deeply. Powerful people had allowed innocent girls to disappear for years, simply because protecting money mattered more than protecting human lives. The emotional weight of that truth stayed with her long after she closed the files. She no longer viewed Dante as the only monster inside this world. The real evil stretched far beyond one criminal empire. A quiet sound behind her made Evelyn turn sharply. Dante stood near the doorway, watching her silently. For a moment, neither moved. Neither spoke. Most men in his position would have reacted violently after someone invaded their private office. But Dante's expression carried exhaustion more than anger. "You weren't supposed to see those," he said quietly. Evelyn struggled emotionally between fear and disgust. How many girls disappeared because of these people? Dante's jaw tightened. Too many. The answer felt painfully honest. That honesty disturbed her even more. "Then why protect them?" she demanded softly. "I don't." "You work with them." "I survive around them." The distinction unsettled her deeply because part of her believed him. Dante approached the desk slowly before removing several photographs from the scattered documents. His eyes lingered on one image longer than the others. A blonde teenage girl smiling beside a church staircase. His sister. She found evidence connecting senators to trafficking routes moving through private shipping companies, Dante said quietly. 3 days later, she disappeared. Evelyn watched pain darken his expression. Not performative grief. Real grief. The kind that never heals completely. They found her body 6 months later. Silence filled the office heavily. Dante rarely discussed emotions openly, but tonight exhaustion weakened the emotional walls surrounding him. Evelyn realized he carried guilt like a permanent wound beneath everything else. She trusted people she shouldn't have trusted, he continued, including members of my own family. That sentence changed the atmosphere instantly. Evelyn looked at him carefully. "You think someone inside your empire betrayed her?" "I know they did." The certainty in his voice felt terrifying. Before Evelyn could respond, another man entered the office unexpectedly. Tall, sharp suit, cold eyes. Federal investigator Damian Cross. Evelyn recognized him immediately from television interviews surrounding organized crime investigations in Chicago. Publicly, Damian Cross represented law and federal justice. Privately, something about him felt deeply wrong. He shook Dante's hand, casually despite their supposed positions on opposite sides of the law. That single interaction told Evelyn everything she needed to know. The federal government and organized crime were not enemies anymore. They were business partners. Damian noticed Evelyn instantly. Interest flickered across his face. "So this is Daniel Carter's daughter," he said smoothly. The mention of her father tightened the room emotionally. Evelyn remained cautious. "You knew him?" Damian smiled faintly. "Your father knew dangerous truths." The statement sounded more like a threat than sympathy. Throughout the evening, Evelyn observed Damian carefully during meetings involving politicians, police officials, and wealthy investors. He moved effortlessly between criminal figures and federal authorities without fear from either side. Everyone trusted him just enough to become vulnerable around him. That made him more dangerous than Dante. Damian manipulated both criminals and law enforcement simultaneously, and nobody seemed capable of stopping him. Meanwhile, Vanessa DeMarco intensified her psychological attacks against Evelyn publicly. Rumors spread through elite social circles accusing Evelyn of manipulating Dante emotionally for money and protection. Wealthy women attending penthouse gatherings mocked her education, background, and appearance openly. Class hatred infected every interaction. To Chicago's elite, Evelyn represented something unacceptable, an ordinary woman standing too close to power she was never supposed to touch. The pressure slowly isolated her emotionally. Yet strangely, Dante became calmer whenever she remained near him. Small moments began changing everything between them. He started leaving office doors unlocked around her. He trusted her presence during private meetings. Sometimes Evelyn caught him watching her silently, like someone afraid history might repeat itself again. That fear humanized him in ways she hated acknowledging. One night, violence finally exploded inside the Empire openly. A trusted Moretti lieutenant was dragged into the penthouse security room after secretly selling financial information to rival mafia organizations. Evelyn accidentally witnessed the punishment while searching for medical supplies downstairs. The brutality shocked her. Dante never raised his voice during the interrogation. That made it worse. The traitor begged desperately while blood stained expensive marble floors. Security guards looked away nervously. Nobody inside the room questioned Dante's authority because fear controlled him more effectively than loyalty ever could. When the punishment ended, silence spread to the penthouse like smoke after fire. Evelyn saw something terrifying then. Dante hated violence emotionally, but he believed brutality was necessary for survival. That contradiction haunted her afterward. Later that night, she found him alone beside the windows overlooking Chicago again. Rain covered the skyline beyond the glass, while helicopters circled somewhere downtown. "You could walk away from this," Evelyn said quietly. Dante stared toward the city. "No," he answered honestly. "People like me don't leave this world alive." The sadness behind the statement unsettled her more than his violence ever had. For the first time, Evelyn stopped seeing him as merely powerful. He was trapped too, by grief, by revenge, by an empire built long before either of them were born. Days later, surveillance paranoia reached dangerous levels after several Moretti operations collapsed unexpectedly. Rival families launched attacks against warehouses. Financial accounts vanished overnight. Federal investigations suddenly targeted Moretti-controlled businesses publicly. Someone powerful was feeding information to enemies from inside the empire. Dante trusted almost nobody now, except Evelyn. That terrified her emotionally because trust inside this world often became a death sentence. Then came the recording. Everything changed because of it. Evelyn discovered the hidden audio file accidentally while searching through old digital archives connected to her father's investigations. The recording had been buried beneath encrypted financial reports inside a protected server room beneath the penthouse. At first, the voices sounded distorted. Then one became unmistakably familiar. Vanessa DeMarco. Another belonged to a senior Moretti advisor. And the final voice nearly stopped Evelyn's heart entirely. Damian Cross. The recording detailed a meeting from years earlier discussing Dante's younger sister before her disappearance. She found the senator files. Vanessa warned calmly. "We can still contain it," Damian replied. Then another voice answered coldly. "If Dante's sister talks publicly, the entire network collapses. Handle it permanently." Silence followed briefly. Then came the sentence that shattered everything. "Make sure the girl disappears before Dante finds out." Evelyn froze as horror consumed her completely. Someone inside Dante's empire had not only betrayed his sister, they had ordered her murder deliberately. The recording destroyed whatever fragile balance still existed inside Dante Moretti's empire. By the following morning, fear moved to the penthouse faster than rumors ever could. Security teams whispered nervously in hallways. Armed guards monitored elevators with visible tension. Politicians suddenly canceled meetings. Financial investors stopped answering calls. Someone inside the empire had betrayed Dante's sister years earlier, and now Evelyn Carter possessed proof. That single fact transformed her into the most dangerous woman in Chicago overnight, not because she held power, because she held truth. And powerful men feared truth more than violence. Dante understood the danger immediately after hearing the recording himself. Evelyn watched something dark shift behind his eyes while the audio played through the office speakers. He remained silent afterward for nearly an entire minute. That silence terrified everyone in the room. Even seasoned security men avoided looking directly at him, because rage inside Dante Moretti never arrived loudly. It arrived quietly, carefully, like death deciding where to strike first. "She stays inside the penthouse," Dante finally ordered coldly. No exceptions. Evelyn felt frustration rise immediately. "I'm not a prisoner." "No," Dante replied without emotion. "You're a target." The distinction changed everything. By sunset, assassination rumors had already spread through Chicago's criminal networks. Rival mafia families now viewed Evelyn as Dante's emotional weakness, the one vulnerability capable of destroying the empire from within. And in organized crime, weaknesses never survive long. Evelyn began noticing it everywhere. Black SUVs lingering outside hospital entrances. Unknown men watching her apartment building from parked vehicles. Strangers following her mother's nurse's home after shifts. Threats arrived silently, professionally, deliberately. Dante responded just as ruthlessly. Additional guards surrounded Evelyn constantly. Bulletproof vehicles replaced ordinary transportation. Entire hotel floors were evacuated before meetings. Security checkpoints multiplied throughout the penthouse tower. The protection itself became psychologically suffocating. Every hallway contained armed men. Every elevator required authorization. Every window reminded Evelyn that someone outside wanted her dead. Meanwhile, Vanessa DeMarco weaponized Chicago's elite social circles against her publicly. Rumors exploded across media outlets connected to wealthy political families. Anonymous articles painted Evelyn as a manipulative woman using emotional influence to gain access to Dante's empire. Television hosts mocked her middle-class background openly, while wealthy investors described her as unstable, dangerous, and socially inappropriate. Class hatred spread quickly among the elite. To powerful people, Evelyn represented something offensive, someone ordinary standing beside untouchable power. Women attending private charity events whispered insults disguised as concern. Politicians' wives criticized her appearance and education cruelly. Social media accounts tied to wealthy families spread conspiracy theories, suggesting Evelyn secretly orchestrated violence within the Moretti organization. The racism and class discrimination became impossible to ignore. Chicago's elite tolerated criminals more easily than poor women entering elite spaces. Evelyn tried pretending the humiliation did not affect her emotionally, but it did. Every public attack slowly chipped away at her sense of identity until she barely recognized herself anymore. One evening, Dante brought her to a private summit meeting involving rival mafia leaders inside a heavily guarded downtown hotel ballroom. The atmosphere felt colder than any battlefield Evelyn had ever imagined. Armed security stood near every entrance, while politicians drank expensive liquor beside organized crime bosses openly. Nobody even pretended morality existed anymore. The summit itself centered around one topic: Evelyn. Rival leaders questioned Dante aggressively about why he continued protecting her despite growing federal investigations and financial instability across the empire. Several older mafia figures viewed his emotional attachment as weakness, threatening everyone connected to the organization. One elderly boss finally spoke the truth aloud. "She's making you vulnerable." The statement shifted the room instantly, because nobody had ever accused Dante Moretti of vulnerability before. Dante's expression remained calm, but Evelyn noticed security teams subtly preparing weapons nearby. Danger moved beneath the surface of the room, quietly. "She's under my protection," Dante answered simply. Another leader leaned forward coldly. "Then your protection becomes our problem." The threat hung heavily over the ballroom. Evelyn suddenly understood something terrifying. The most dangerous men in Chicago feared Dante less than they feared the possibility he might actually love someone. Love created unpredictability, and unpredictability destroyed empires. That realization changed the way she looked at Dante forever, not because she suddenly trusted him completely, but because she finally understood how isolated he truly was. Every person surrounding him expected violence, control, fear. The moment human emotion entered the equation, they immediately moved to destroy it. The meeting ended without bloodshed, but tension followed them back to the penthouse like smoke after fire. Over the next several days, psychological warfare spread throughout Dante's empire relentlessly. Financial accounts disappeared overnight. Warehouses burned mysteriously. Federal investigations targeted Moretti-owned businesses publicly, while Damien Cross positioned himself carefully at the center of every operation. Officially, Damien represented justice. Privately, he manipulated both criminals and federal agencies simultaneously. Evelyn noticed it clearly now. Every raid somehow benefited Damien politically. Every leak weakened Dante while strengthening government influence over organized crime operations. Damien did not want justice. He wanted control, and he planned to inherit whatever remained after the empire collapsed. Meanwhile, betrayal inside Dante's inner circle continued growing. Trusted security members vanished unexpectedly. Confidential information leaked repeatedly. Rival organizations intercepted shipments only senior Moretti officials knew existed. Someone close to Dante continued feeding enemies information. The paranoia infected everyone. Guards accused one another quietly. Staff members avoided conversations near surveillance systems. Nobody trusted anyone anymore, not even themselves. Yet amid the chaos, emotional trust between Evelyn and Dante deepened slowly in unexpected ways. Not through dramatic confessions, not through romantic speeches, through survival. Late nights reviewing financial documents together. Silent moments beside penthouse windows, while helicopters circled the city below. The way Dante checked hospital security personally before allowing Evelyn's mother treatment. The way Evelyn remained beside him after violent meetings stained with blood and betrayal. Their connection formed through loyalty rather than fantasy. And somehow that made it more dangerous. One stormy evening, Evelyn wandered into the memorial room dedicated to Dante's younger sister again. Rain hammered against Chicago's skyline outside, while candlelight flickered across old photographs covering the walls. Dante stood silently near the center of the room. For once, exhaustion outweighed control entirely. Evelyn studied him carefully. The feared mafia Don looked less like a criminal tonight, and more like a grieving brother who never escaped the worst moment of his life. "She was 17, he said quietly without turning around. Evelyn remained silent. She thought exposing them would save people. Pain darkened his voice gradually. But powerful men protect each other before they protect innocent lives. The truth of that statement settled heavily between them. Dante looked toward one photograph carefully. "My sister trusted someone she loved," he continued softly. "That trust killed her." Evelyn realized then why Dante feared attachment emotionally. Loss had shaped every part of him afterward. And now history threatened repeating itself again. Because of her. The realization became almost unbearable emotionally. For the first time since entering Dante's world, Evelyn considered leaving permanently. Not out of fear for herself, but fear of what remaining near him might ultimately destroy. But she never got the opportunity. Everything collapsed 2 nights later. A massive charity gala inside the penthouse tower gathered politicians, investors, celebrities, and organized crime figures beneath one roof. Publicly, the event celebrated economic redevelopment projects across Chicago. Privately, everyone understood it was about power and survival. Evelyn attended reluctantly under heavy security, while tension spread to the ballroom invisibly. Rival mafia leaders watched her constantly. Wealthy social elites whispered insults openly behind champagne glasses. Vanessa DeMarco moved through the crowd like poison wrapped in elegance, spreading rumors strategically between powerful guests. Meanwhile, Dante remained unusually protective throughout the evening. He rarely allowed Evelyn more than several feet away from him. That alone frightened people. Because Dante Moretti never publicly displayed emotional attachment. Not until now, near midnight. Heavy thunder shook the skyline outside, while rain slammed against the tower windows violently. The atmosphere inside the penthouse shifted suddenly when security communications began failing floor by floor. Someone had compromised internal systems. Again, Dante recognized the danger immediately. His expression hardened instantly while guards moved toward exits. Then the lights flickered. Panic spread quietly through the ballroom. Evelyn felt it before understanding it completely. Something terrible was about to happen. Dante grabbed her wrist firmly, guiding her away from the crowd toward private corridors leading upstairs. The moment they reached Evelyn's penthouse bedroom floor, the first gunshots echoed somewhere below. Screams followed seconds later. Security teams rushed through hallways while emergency alarms activated throughout the tower, where it finally arrived inside the Empire openly. Evelyn's breathing turned uneven as Dante pushed her toward the bedroom doorway. "Stay away from the windows," he ordered sharply. Before she could respond, thunder exploded across the skyline again. Then came the sound, glass shattering violently. A sniper bullet crashed through Evelyn's penthouse bedroom window during the midnight thunderstorm. The sniper bullet changed something inside Evelyn Carter permanently. Even hours later, she still heard the violent crack of shattered glass replaying inside her mind whenever silence settled around her. Security teams swept to the penthouse relentlessly afterward, searching neighboring rooftops, interrogating guards, locking down elevators, and monitoring every movement inside the tower. Nobody slept that night, not even Dante Moretti. Especially not Dante Moretti. By sunrise, Chicago's criminal underworld already knew what happened. Rumors spread through political offices, private clubs, luxury hotels, and underground networks with terrifying speed. Someone had openly targeted the woman standing beside Dante. That alone was dangerous enough. But what frightened people more was Dante's reaction afterward. He had nearly killed 3 men during the overnight investigation, despite lacking proof they were involved. Entire security divisions were replaced before dawn. Several trusted officials disappeared from the organization completely. Fear infected the Empire openly now, and Evelyn finally understood the truth nobody wanted to admit aloud. Dante Moretti was losing emotional control because of her. That realization terrified her more than the sniper attack itself. For days afterward, the penthouse transformed into something colder than prison. Armed guards stood outside Evelyn's bedroom constantly. Bulletproof barriers covered windows. Hallways echoed with security radios and distant arguments between rival factions inside Dante's organization. Nobody trusted anyone anymore. Meanwhile, Damian Cross appeared publicly across national media channels, pretending federal investigations were finally closing around organized crime networks throughout Chicago. Politicians praised him. News stations celebrated him. Financial elites quietly aligned themselves beside him. But Evelyn understood the truth now. Damian manipulated both the government and the mafia simultaneously, and somehow he continued gaining power from both sides. At the same time, Vanessa DeMarco intensified psychological attacks against Evelyn publicly. Rumors painted her as emotionally unstable. Wealthy media investors suggested she manipulated Dante deliberately to weaken the Moretti empire from within. Every attack carried the same hidden message. She did not belong beside powerful people. Class hatred continued poisoning every room she entered. But now another emotion had joined the hatred: fear. Chicago's elite no longer viewed Evelyn as merely inconvenient. They viewed her as dangerous because Dante protected her openly. One cold evening, after days of emotional suffocation inside the penthouse, Evelyn finally reached her limit. She packed quietly. 1 suitcase, simple clothes, medical textbooks, her mother's photographs. Nothing connected to Dante's world. Nothing connected to the Empire. The penthouse remained unusually silent while rain covered Chicago's skyline outside. Security guards occupied distant hallways, unaware Evelyn planned to leave permanently. For the first time since entering Dante's world, she wanted freedom more than answers, because staying near him no longer felt survivable. Not emotionally, not physically. The sniper attack proved something irreversible. Anyone close to Dante eventually became collateral damage, and Evelyn refused becoming another memorial hidden inside his empire. She zipped the suitcase slowly before walking toward the private elevator. Then Dante stepped from the shadows near the hallway entrance. He looked exhausted, not powerful, not dangerous, just tired. Rainwater darkened his black coat from whatever emergency meeting he had returned from moments earlier. His eyes immediately dropped toward the suitcase beside her. Neither spoke at first, but the silence between them felt painfully heavy. "You're leaving," Dante said quietly. Evelyn avoided his eyes. I can't stay here anymore. He nodded once slowly, almost like he expected this moment eventually. Yet something inside his expression shifted anyway. Fear, real fear, the kind, powerful men spend entire lives hiding. This isn't safe anymore, Evelyn continued softly. Everywhere I go, people die. Every day your enemies get closer. Your empire is collapsing. My empire was collapsing long before you arrived. That doesn't change anything. Dante looked toward the penthouse windows where Chicago's skyline glowed beneath rain and darkness. You think leaving protects you? He asked quietly. I think staying destroys me. The honesty behind her words visibly affected him. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Dante did something Evelyn never expected. He stepped closer slowly, not as a mafia boss asserting control, not as a criminal giving orders, as a broken man trying desperately not to lose someone again. For the first time in years, he said carefully, I don't wake up feeling completely alone. The confession shattered something inside Evelyn emotionally because it carried no manipulation, only truth. And truth sounded far more dangerous coming from Dante Moretti than threats ever could. You shouldn't need me for that, Evelyn whispered. But I do. The vulnerability in his voice unsettled her deeply. Dante had spent his entire life controlling people through fear. Yet standing here now, he looked emotionally defenseless in ways nobody inside his empire had likely ever witnessed before. Because this time he was not trying to force obedience. He was terrified of abandonment. Evelyn suddenly understood why he watched her so carefully from the beginning, why her presence disturbed him emotionally, why losing her frightened him more than rival organizations or federal investigations ever had. She reminded him of the sister he failed to protect, and now history threatened repeating itself again. I can't become another ghost haunting your life, Evelyn said softly. Pain flickered visibly across Dante's expression. You already are. The sentence lingered heavily between them, but before either could continue, one of Dante's security officers entered the hallway urgently. The ballroom meeting starts in 20 minutes, the guard warned carefully. Everyone's already arriving. Dante's expression hardened instantly again. The emotional vulnerability vanished behind cold control. Evelyn realized how quickly he rebuilt emotional walls whenever the outside world approached. That frightened her too. The evening's gathering involved nearly every remaining political and criminal power broker still connected to the Moretti empire. Officially, the event celebrated economic recovery projects tied to downtown Chicago redevelopment. Privately, everyone understood the truth. The empire was fracturing publicly, and tonight would decide who survived the collapse. Dante insisted Evelyn remain beside him throughout the event despite obvious risks. Part of her wanted to refuse completely, but another part no longer trusted the world outside his protection either. That realization disturbed her most of all. The ballroom itself radiated dark luxury and quiet tension. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors, while politicians, billionaires, and organized crime leaders moved carefully through the crowd, pretending civilization still existed between them. But beneath the elegance, violence waited everywhere. Hidden weapons beneath jackets, security teams monitoring exits, private whispers carrying threats disguised as negotiations. Psychological warfare spread through the ballroom invisibly. Evelyn noticed rival mafia leaders studying Dante constantly throughout the night. They watched his movements around her carefully, measuring emotional weakness like predators sensing injury beneath armor. And Dante noticed it too. For the first time since meeting him, Evelyn saw genuine fear inside his eyes. Not fear of dying, fear of losing someone again. Vanessa DeMarco moved strategically between political figures during the gathering, quietly manipulating conversations against Dante while increasing pressure around the empire's collapsing finances and federal exposure. Meanwhile, Damian Cross operated near the center of the ballroom effortlessly, balancing politicians and criminals like chess pieces beneath his control. Everywhere Evelyn looked, betrayal surrounded them. Then came the speech. One powerful senator publicly praised Damian's federal operations targeting organized crime corruption across Chicago. Large screens surrounding the ballroom suddenly activated behind him. Financial records appeared, secret transactions, trafficking routes, photographs connecting judges and politicians to criminal organizations. Gasps spread to the ballroom immediately. Someone had leaked everything publicly. Panic exploded beneath controlled silence. Politicians rushed toward exits. Security teams drew weapons discreetly. Several mafia leaders accused one another openly. The empire was bleeding in real time, and every person inside the ballroom understood survival now mattered more than loyalty. Evelyn looked toward Dante. For the first time, the feared mafia don appeared emotionally overwhelmed. Not because corruption had become public, because he finally realized there was no saving the empire anymore, only surviving its destruction. The chaos intensified rapidly after that. Security communications failed floor by floor again. Hidden cameras shut down across hotel corridors. Armed men infiltrated lower levels disguised as federal agents. Someone inside the organization had betrayed them completely. Fear spread through the criminal empire like wildfire. Evelyn suddenly felt Dante's hand close around hers tightly beneath the ballroom table. Not possessive, desperate. He looked at her carefully then, and for one terrifying moment the entire room seemed to disappear around them. "You should have left while you still could," he said quietly. The sadness behind the statement nearly broke her emotionally, because she realized something devastating. Despite everything, the violence, manipulation, fear, and destruction, part of her no longer wanted to leave him either. That emotional attachment frightened her more than the empire itself. Then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Suddenly, the ballroom doors slammed shut automatically. Heavy locks engaged from outside. Security teams reached for weapons instantly, while terrified politicians backed away from the exits. And somewhere beyond the locked doors, armed men surrounded the entire hotel. The moment the ballroom doors locked, civilization disappeared. Panic spread to the luxury hotel instantly. Politicians abandoned dignity first, rushing toward exits while security teams shouted conflicting orders across communication devices already compromised from inside. Wealthy investors ducked beneath tables. Armed guards reached for concealed weapons. Then the gunfire began. The first shots exploded through the upper balcony windows, shattering crystal chandeliers above the ballroom floor. Screams echoed violently through the massive room as glass rained over terrified guests. Blood stained marble within seconds. Evelyn Carter froze briefly in shock while bodies collapsed around her. But Dante Moretti moved immediately. Years of violence had trained him to recognize chaos before others fully understood danger. He grabbed Evelyn's arm sharply and pulled her behind an overturned banquet table just as bullets ripped through the space where she had been standing moments earlier. The ballroom transformed into a battlefield almost instantly. Rival mafia factions opened fire from opposite balconies, while hidden shooters emerged from disguised catering teams near service corridors. Politicians screamed for protection, while federal agents disguised among hotel staff revealed themselves too late. Everyone had betrayed everyone. And somewhere inside the violence, Dante finally understood the horrifying truth. This attack had been planned from within his own organization. Traitors surrounded him. Evelyn watched his expression darken as security communications erupted through nearby radios. Entire defense teams had disappeared from assigned positions. Elevator access systems were overridden remotely. Surveillance feeds shut down across multiple hotel floors simultaneously. The empire was collapsing from the inside. One of Dante's trusted captains suddenly turned his weapon toward another Moretti guard without warning, firing twice into man's chest before disappearing into the chaos. More betrayal followed immediately afterward. Men Dante trusted for years began choosing sides openly. The hotel became a graveyard of broken loyalty. Evelyn struggled to process the nightmare unfolding around her, while Dante guided her through collapsing corridors filled with smoke, shattered glass, and terrified civilians fleeing in every direction. The smell of gunpowder and burning electricity spread rapidly throughout the building. Below them, somewhere deeper inside the hotel tower, explosions shook entire floors violently. Someone had planted bombs. And judging by the destruction spreading upward, the attackers intended to erase the Moretti Empire completely tonight. Dante led Evelyn toward a private security corridor hidden behind the ballroom kitchens, while armed men exchanged gunfire nearby. Hotel staff members screamed while trying to escape through blocked exits. Several never made it. An innocent waitress collapsed beside a service cart after stray bullets tore through the hallway. A terrified young bartender died, shielding guests beneath a staircase moments later. Evelyn had studied medicine long enough to recognize fatal injuries instantly, but there was no time to help anyone. Survival consumed everything now. Another explosion rocked the tower violently, nearly throwing Evelyn against the wall. Emergency lights activated across the corridor as fire alarms screamed overhead. Smoke began filling the upper levels rapidly. Yet amid the chaos, Dante remained disturbingly calm, not emotionally detached, focused, like a man who expected this war eventually. That realization unsettled Evelyn deeply. "You knew this was coming," she whispered breathlessly while following him through the burning corridor. Dante did not answer immediately. Gunfire echoed again nearby before he finally responded coldly. "I knew they'd destroy everything before allowing the truth to survive." The statement lingered heavily in Evelyn's mind while they descended deeper into restricted hotel levels guarded by surviving Moretti security forces. But even here, paranoia infected everyone. Nobody trusted loyalty anymore. One wounded guard warned Dante quietly that multiple Inner Circle officials had vanished hours before the attack began. Financial accounts connected to the Empire had already been emptied remotely. Warehouses across Chicago were burning simultaneously. This was bigger than revenge. Someone was dismantling the entire organization systematically, and Damian Cross stood at the center of it. News broadcasts playing across damaged hotel screens confirmed it moments later. Federal agencies had launched coordinated raids throughout Chicago targeting Moretti businesses, political allies, financial operations, and trafficking routes all at once. Publicly, Damian appeared heroic. A federal investigator finally exposing organized crime corruption nationwide. Privately, Evelyn understood the horrifying reality. Damian manipulated both federal systems and criminal empires simultaneously until they destroyed one another. Now, he planned inheriting control afterward. The realization sickened her. So many innocent lives ruined simply because powerful men treated human suffering like strategy. Then Vanessa DeMarco revealed her betrayal completely. Evelyn spotted her through a shattered conference room doorway, speaking calmly with rival mafia leaders, while Moretti guards died across surrounding hallways. Vanessa no longer even pretended loyalty toward Dante's empire. She had helped orchestrate the attack. Years of manipulation, jealousy, and political ambition finally surfaced openly beneath the burning hotel lights. When Vanessa noticed Dante watching her, she smiled coldly instead of running. That smile carried more cruelty than violence itself, because she believed Dante had already lost. Several rival gunmen immediately opened fire toward them afterward, forcing Dante and Evelyn deeper into lower hotel floors, while chaos consumed the upper levels entirely. The brutality Evelyn witnessed next changed her permanently. For the first time, she saw the full violence hidden beneath Dante Moretti's controlled exterior, and it terrified her. Not because he enjoyed violence, because he used it without hesitation whenever survival demanded it. One armed traitor emerged from a maintenance corridor aiming directly toward Evelyn. Dante reacted instantly, killing the man before Evelyn even fully processed the danger. Another attacker lunged from behind overturned furniture moments later. Again, Dante responded ruthlessly, efficiently, emotionlessly. The feared Mafia King finally emerged completely beneath the collapsing empire, and Evelyn understood why powerful men feared him so deeply. Yet what frightened her most was not the violence. It was the reason behind it. Every brutal act tonight centered around protecting her. That emotional reality became impossible to ignore. As they moved through smoke-filled hallways lined with dead security officers and shattered walls, Evelyn's fear slowly transformed into something more emotionally dangerous. Loyalty. Not blind loyalty, but understanding. She finally realized Dante was not fighting preserved power anymore. He was fighting to keep her alive long enough to escape the destruction surrounding them. Then came the truth about her father. Inside a hidden underground security room beneath the hotel, Dante accessed confidential files while explosions shook the tower above them. Surveillance monitors displayed federal raids happening across Chicago in real time. Moretti properties burned everywhere. The empire was dying publicly. Dante opened one final encrypted file, connected to Evelyn's father, and the truth shattered her emotionally. Her father had never truly worked for the Moretti Empire. He had secretly investigated trafficking operations tied to politicians, judges, and criminal networks for years before his death. Dante's younger sister discovered the same corruption independently around the same time. Together they planned exposing everything. But someone inside the organization betrayed them first. Dante's sister was murdered. Evelyn's father disappeared shortly afterward. Powerful people erased both investigations completely. Evelyn stared at the evidence, silently, while grief hollowed her chest from inside. Her father had died trying to protect innocent people, and nobody remembered him for it. They buried everything, she whispered painfully. Dante looked at her carefully then. No, he answered quietly. They thought they buried it. The difference mattered, because tonight the truth was finally surfacing publicly across national media channels. Financial corruption, human trafficking networks, political blackmail operations, every secret hidden beneath the Moretti Empire now leaked into public view uncontrollably. The criminal world was collapsing alongside the political system protecting it. And suddenly Evelyn understood the most terrifying truth of all. Dante was never trying to save his empire. He was preparing to destroy it before it destroyed her too. That realization changed everything she believed about him. All his paranoia, his control, his desperate attempts to keep her nearby, none of it centered around ownership. It centered around fear. Fear that history would repeat itself. Fear that another innocent person connected to him would die, because powerful men value corruption more than human life. Above them, another explosion ripped through the hotel violently. The building groaned beneath structural damage, now spreading floor by floor. Fire consumed entire sections of the upper tower. Emergency sirens echoed throughout downtown Chicago while helicopters circled overhead. Federal agents were surrounding the property completely. Time was running out. Dante grabbed Evelyn's hand firmly before leading her toward an underground emergency exit tunnel connected to neighboring buildings. But halfway there, betrayal struck again. Several remaining Moretti guards suddenly turned their weapons toward Dante. Inner Circle traitors. The final betrayal. Gunfire erupted instantly across the underground corridor, while sparks exploded from damaged electrical systems overhead. Dante shielded Evelyn behind concrete pillars, while returning fire with terrifying precision. One guard fell immediately. Another collapsed beside the emergency tunnel entrance. But during the chaos, an explosion detonated somewhere above them. The ceiling partially collapsed. Flames erupted through ventilation systems, while smoke swallowed the underground hallway rapidly. The hotel was coming down. Dante shoved Evelyn toward the emergency tunnel exit forcefully, while debris crashed around them. She refused initially, but then another explosion tore through the corridor violently, throwing both of them against the wall. Pain exploded through Evelyn's shoulder. The fire intensified instantly afterward. Dante pulled her upright desperately while alarm screamed across the collapsing underground level. "You have to go now," he ordered harshly. Evelyn looked at him through smoke and fire, finally understanding something devastating. He never intended escaping with her. This had always been his final war. "No," she whispered emotionally. But Dante pushed her toward the emergency exit again. For one brief moment beneath the burning ruins, the feared Mafia Don looked less like a criminal king and more like a broken man exhausted from carrying years of grief, guilt, and violence alone. Then the final explosion erupted. The underground corridor collapsed between them violently. Flames swallowed the hotel structure, while Evelyn was thrown to the emergency exit tunnel by the force of the blast. And somewhere inside the burning ruins behind her, Dante Moretti disappeared after saving her from the explosion. Even 6 months after the destruction of the Moretti Hotel, powerful men still lowered their voices whenever Dante Moretti's name entered conversation, not because they believed he was alive, because they feared the possibility he might be. Chicago never truly recovered from the night the empire collapsed. Entire political careers disappeared within weeks after classified financial records leaked publicly across national media networks. Federal investigations spread beyond Illinois into New York, Washington, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. Judges resigned quietly. Billionaires vanished overseas. Criminal organizations fractured violently beneath the pressure of betrayal and paranoia. The Moretti Empire had fallen publicly, but its ruins poisoned everything afterward. And somewhere beneath that destruction, Dante's absence haunted the underworld more dangerously than his presence ever had. Because dead men could not seek revenge, but missing men could. Evelyn Carter understood that fear better than anyone. She tried rebuilding her life quietly after surviving the hotel massacre. She moved into a modest apartment near the northern edge of Chicago under federal protection, connected to ongoing investigations. She returned to medical studies slowly. She visited her mother more often. Outwardly, her life appeared calmer, safer, normal, but trauma followed her everywhere. She woke suddenly at night, hearing phantom explosions inside her memory. Loud noises made her heart race uncontrollably. Elevators reminded her of trapped hallways and collapsing steel. Sometimes she caught herself studying strangers too carefully in grocery stores or subway stations, wondering whether they were watching her, because someone always seemed to be watching. Even months later, several surviving enemies connected to rival mafia families still viewed Evelyn as dangerous. She knew too much about political corruption, trafficking networks, and financial crimes tied to powerful organizations still operating beneath public systems. And more importantly, she had been close to Dante Moretti. That alone made her valuable, or expendable. Federal investigator Damian Cross rose politically during the aftermath, exactly as Dante predicted. National media celebrated him as the man responsible for dismantling one of America's most dangerous criminal empires. Interviews praised his intelligence. Politicians rewarded him publicly. But Evelyn saw the darkness hiding beneath his success now. Damian had not destroyed corruption. He had reorganized it. Every system remained poisoned. Only the names controlling power had changed. That realization left Evelyn emotionally exhausted. The world continued pretending justice existed, while innocent victims remained forgotten beneath political theater. Some nights, she thought about leaving Chicago permanently, starting over somewhere nobody knew her name. But the city held her emotionally hostage now, because every street reminded her of Dante somehow. The restaurant where they first met, the skyline visible from his penthouse, the violent fire reflecting across the river the night the empire collapsed. And slowly, painfully, Evelyn realized something she hated admitting to herself. She missed him, not the mafia king, not the violence. The man hidden beneath all of it, the exhausted soul who carried guilt like chains around his life. That emotional truth disturbed her deeply, because peaceful life without Dante suddenly felt emptier than dangerous life beside him ever had. One cold November evening, Evelyn returned home after classes and found a plain envelope waiting beneath her apartment door. No address, no postage, only her name written neatly across the front. Fear tightened inside her chest immediately. She locked the apartment carefully before opening it. Inside rested a small photograph, an underground train tunnel beneath Chicago. On the back, a message was written in black ink. Truth survives underground. No signature. But Evelyn recognized the handwriting instantly. Dante. Her hands trembled slightly while staring at the message. Logic insisted it was impossible. The hotel explosion should have killed him. Entire sections of the tower collapsed into flames. Federal agencies searched the ruins for days afterward. No body was ever recovered. At the time, officials assumed the fire destroyed physical remains completely. But now doubt spread through Evelyn's thoughts dangerously. Over the following weeks, more coded messages appeared unexpectedly. A newspaper clipping with hidden coordinates circled in red ink. A subway map marked with strange symbols. A storage key hidden inside medical textbooks delivered anonymously to her apartment. Someone guided her carefully towards something buried beneath Chicago. And every clue connected somehow to Dante's past. Meanwhile, paranoia intensified around her again. A black SUV appeared repeatedly near her apartment building. Unknown callers remained silent whenever she answered late-night phone calls. Once she noticed the same man following her through two separate subway stations before disappearing suddenly. The war surrounding the Moretti Empire had not truly ended. It had simply moved underground. Then hidden financial records resurfaced publicly online. Entire encrypted files connected to trafficking operations, political bribery, and judicial corruption flooded independent media networks overnight. Several senators resigned within 48 hours. Federal investigations reopened across multiple states. Someone was still leaking Moretti intelligence systems strategically, and only one person possessed enough information to destroy the remaining corruption networks completely. Dante. Fear spread rapidly through criminal organizations afterward, because if Dante survived, then vengeance survived too. Evelyn spent sleepless nights studying the coded clues repeatedly until one pattern finally emerged clearly. Every location connected to abandoned underground railway systems beneath old Chicago neighborhoods, places forgotten by the city decades earlier. And hidden somewhere among them existed something important enough for Dante to risk contacting her. Possibly a vault, possibly evidence, possibly answers. Around the same time, Evelyn uncovered the final truth about her father through files secretly uploaded into a protected federal archive. The discovery devastated her emotionally. Her father never simply investigated corruption quietly. He helped build evidence against an international trafficking network connected to politicians, judges, wealthy investors, and organized crime operations for nearly 10 years before his death. Dante's younger sister discovered the same network separately while working inside Moretti Financial Systems. Together they planned exposing everyone involved publicly, but betrayal destroyed everything first. Damien Cross himself orchestrated the cover-up years earlier while pretending to investigate the crimes officially. That realization horrified Evelyn completely. The man celebrated nationally as a hero had protected monsters for years, and Dante knew the truth long before anyone else. Suddenly, his paranoia of violence and obsession with control made terrifying sense. He was never fighting merely for power. He was fighting a system designed to consume anyone threatening its secrets, including her father, including his sister, including Evelyn now. The emotional weight of that realization shattered the final pieces of fear she still carried toward Dante. For the first time, sympathy overcame terror completely. Several days later, another message arrived. Only 2 words this time. St. Gabriel. Evelyn recognized the name immediately. An abandoned cathedral beneath Chicago's oldest underground district. The church had partially collapsed decades earlier after subway expansions damaged its foundation. Most of the structure remained sealed beneath newer construction projects. Forgotten by the city. Perfect for hiding. Logic warned her not to go alone. But emotionally, she already knew she would. Rain covered Chicago the night. Evelyn finally followed the clues underground. She descended through abandoned subway access tunnels, carrying only a flashlight, and the coded maps hidden inside her coat pocket. The deeper she traveled beneath the city, the quieter the world became. No traffic, no sirens, only dripping water echoing through darkness. Fear returned slowly while she navigated rusted railway corridors leading toward the abandoned cathedral district. Part of her still believed this could be a trap, another manipulation, another betrayal waiting underground. But hope moved beside fear now, and hope frightened her almost as much. Eventually, the tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber hidden beneath the city. The ruined cathedral stood silently in darkness ahead of her. Ancient stone pillars disappeared into shadows overhead. Broken stained glass reflected faint light across flooded marble floors. Dust-covered old religious statues abandoned decades earlier beneath Chicago's underground expansion systems. The cathedral felt frozen in time, like a grave built for forgotten souls. Evelyn stepped carefully deeper inside, while her heartbeat echoed painfully in her ears. Then she noticed movement. A figure standing near the far end of the cathedral beneath shattered arches. Tall, still, watching her silently from the shadows. Her breath caught instantly, because even after months apart, even after explosions, death, betrayal, and fire, she recognized him immediately. Dante Moretti stepped partially into the dim cathedral light, older somehow than she remembered. A scar cut across one side of his face now. Exhaustion darkened his eyes deeply, but he was alive, And the moment Evelyn saw him standing there beneath the ruined cathedral ceiling, fear and hope collided violently inside her chest all at once. The final time Dante Moretti reached for Evelyn Carter's hand happened beneath the burning cathedral moments before the entire empire collapsed forever. Rainwater dripped steadily through shattered stone ceilings while silence stretched painfully between them. For several seconds, neither of them moved. The abandoned cathedral beneath Chicago felt detached from the rest of the world, like a forgotten grave hidden beneath civilization itself. Dust floated through weak candlelight near broken religious statues, while distant subway vibrations echoed beneath the ancient floor. And standing within the shadows of that ruined sanctuary, Dante looked less like the feared mafia king who once controlled Chicago, and more like a man carrying the weight of too many funerals. Evelyn stared at him carefully. Months ago, she would have feared him instantly. Now the fear felt different, sadder, because she finally understood what existed beneath the violence. Dante stepped closer slowly, exhaustion visible in every movement. The scar along his face appeared darker beneath the dim cathedral lights, but it was his eyes that unsettled her most. They no longer carried rage, only grief. "You should not have come here," he said quietly. Yet even now, his voice carried relief beneath the warning. Evelyn's chest tightened emotionally. "You kept sending messages." Dante looked away briefly toward the cathedral altar, where old surveillance monitors and scattered files covered wooden tables hidden beneath tarps. "The city is collapsing faster than people realize," he answered carefully. "And Damien knows you're close to the truth now." The mention of Damien Cross poisoned the atmosphere instantly, because outside this forgotten cathedral, a new war had already begun. After the destruction of the Moretti Empire, criminal organizations across America fractured violently. Rival families fought openly for territory, while political figures desperately erased connections to trafficking operations exposed through leaked Moretti intelligence files. But someone remained in control behind the chaos. Damien. Federal agencies publicly celebrated him as a national hero, while secretly granting him greater authority over organized crime investigations nationwide. He manipulated both law enforcement and surviving criminal networks simultaneously, positioning himself above everyone else, exactly as Dante predicted. And now Damien wanted the final remaining evidence hidden beneath Chicago destroyed permanently, including Evelyn, including Dante, including every truth connected to the dead. Dante guided Evelyn deeper into Cathedral toward a hidden underground archive concealed beneath the altar platform. Inside rested thousands of classified files, hard drives, financial ledgers, surveillance recordings, and political blackmail records connected to corruption networks operating across the country. The scale horrified Evelyn instantly. Senators, judges, corporate executives, federal officials, religious leaders, entire systems tied secretly to trafficking operations and organized violence for decades. Human suffering buried beneath wealth and political power. Evelyn's hands trembled while reviewing evidence connected to missing girls, illegal financial transfers, witness disappearances, and government interference protecting powerful men. This was never just organized crime, she whispered painfully. "No," Dante answered. Crime was only the mask. The truth sickened her. People spent years blaming monsters hiding in alleyways, while the real predators attended political fundraisers and charity events surrounded by cameras. And suddenly Evelyn understood why Dante became obsessed with destroying the empire instead of ruling it. The corruption reached too deep to control safely. It consumed everyone eventually, including him. While Evelyn processed the files emotionally, Dante revealed the final truth surrounding her father. Years earlier, Evelyn's father discovered trafficking routes connected to Chicago politicians while working inside Moretti financial systems secretly. Dante's younger sister uncovered the same operation independently after witnessing young women disappear from Moretti-controlled properties. Together they gathered evidence quietly. Together they planned exposing everyone involved publicly. But Damien Cross learned about the investigation before they could act. Dante's sister was murdered first. Evelyn's father disappeared shortly afterward after refusing to surrender the evidence. The betrayal destroyed Dante emotionally. Not because he lost power, because he failed to protect innocent people who trusted him. That guilt shaped every violent decision afterward, every act of control. every paranoid attempt to keep Evelyn nearby. And finally, beneath the ruined cathedral, Dante admitted the emotional truth he spent years burying beneath brutality. "She reminded me of you," Evelyn whispered carefully while holding a photograph of Dante's younger sister. Dante's expression tightened painfully. "For a long time, I thought protecting people only made them targets," he admitted quietly. "Then I met you." The confession lingered heavily between them. Evelyn looked at him silently, and for the first time since entering his world, Dante Moretti appeared emotionally defenseless. "I feared losing you because you were the only person who made me want to become human again." The words broke something inside her completely, not because they sounded romantic, because they sounded honest. Dante never truly wanted control over her life. He wanted redemption, and that terrified him more than violence ever could. Before Evelyn could respond, alarms suddenly activated throughout the underground cathedral. Dante's expression darkened instantly. Someone found them. Security monitors flickered alive moments later, revealing armed vehicles surrounding abandoned subway entrances above ground. Federal tactical teams moved into surrounding tunnel systems rapidly, while black SUVs belonging to surviving mafia factions arrived simultaneously from opposite directions. Enemies from every side. Damien had finally come personally. The cathedral transformed into a war zone within minutes. Gunfire erupted through upper tunnel entrances, while explosions shook ancient stone foundations violently. Rival criminal organizations entered first, desperate to recover blackmail evidence before federal agents seized everything. Chaos spread underground immediately. Dante armed surviving loyalist positioned throughout the cathedral, while Evelyn helped secure evidence drives connected to trafficking victims and political crimes. For the first time in her life, fear no longer controlled her. Purpose did, because now she understood the truth clearly. If this evidence disappeared tonight, the entire system would survive again, and countless future victims would vanish into silence exactly like before. Vanessa DeMarco arrived beside Damien shortly afterward. Even now, surrounded by violence and collapsing tunnels, Vanessa appeared elegant and emotionally cold. Years of manipulation and ambition hardened her into something almost unrecognizable. She blamed Evelyn for everything, for Dante's emotional weakness, for the Empire's collapse, for destroying the power structure Vanessa spent years trying to inherit. Her hatred poisoned Cathedral instantly. Meanwhile, Damien remained disturbingly calm while federal agents exchanged gunfire with rival mafia soldiers above the underground chambers. Because Damien believed he already won. He expected everyone inside the cathedral to die tonight. Then surviving political leaders would rebuild the system quietly beneath new leadership, history repeating itself again. But Dante had prepared differently. Secret data transfers activated automatically through encrypted servers hidden beneath the cathedral floor. Thousands of classified files began uploading globally toward journalists, independent investigators, foreign intelligence agencies, and public media networks simultaneously. The truth escaped containment forever. Within minutes, national news systems exploded with leaked corruption records connecting government officials to trafficking operations nationwide. Political panic spread publicly. Stock markets crashed. Emergency arrests began across multiple states. The Empire finally started dying in public view. Damien realized it too late. His calm disappeared instantly afterward. He ordered full termination protocols across the cathedral. Kill everyone. Destroy everything. The underground sanctuary erupted into complete warfare. Ancient stone pillars shattered beneath gunfire while explosions collapsed sections of tunnel overhead. Fire spread rapidly through old electrical systems connected beneath the city. Smoke consumed the cathedral. And amid the destruction, Dante transformed completely. Not into the brutal mafia king Evelyn once feared. Into a man finally willing to sacrifice power instead of protecting it. He no longer fought to survive. He fought to end the cycle permanently. Vanessa attempted escaping with several encrypted drives during the chaos, but rival gunmen intercepted her near the collapsing altar stairs. Years of manipulation and betrayal finally consumed her beneath the empire she helped poison. Damien tried fleeing through lower subway tunnels moments later. Dante stopped him personally. The confrontation felt less like revenge and more like judgment. Two men shaped by corruption differently. One embraced the system for power. The other destroyed himself trying to escape it. Gunfire echoed once through the burning cathedral depths. When Evelyn reached the lower tunnels afterward, Damien Cross lay bleeding beside flooded railway tracks, while Dante stood silently nearby. No victory existed inside his expression, only exhaustion. The cathedral began collapsing around them rapidly afterward. Fire spread through support beams while federal agents closed inward from every remaining entrance. Emergency sirens echoed above ground across downtown Chicago. Time was running out. Dante grabbed Evelyn's hand firmly and guided her toward an escape route hidden beneath the old sanctuary chambers. But halfway there, another explosion destroyed part of the tunnel ahead. Debris separated them briefly, while flames surged across surrounding corridors. Evelyn panicked instantly, not from fear of death, fear of losing him again. Dante reached for her through smoke and falling ash while the cathedral collapsed around them. For one final moment beneath the burning ruins, their hands touched, and Evelyn finally understood everything. Dante Moretti spent years believing love only destroyed innocent people. Yet in the end, love was the only thing that made him destroy the empire itself. "You have to leave now," he told her quietly. Evelyn refused emotionally, but Dante forced the final surviving evidence drives into her hands. "This ends with you surviving." The cathedral shook violently again. Flames swallowed the lower tunnels rapidly, while federal agents stormed remaining entrances above them. Then Dante stepped backward into the collapsing smoke before Evelyn could stop him. The last thing she saw clearly was a silhouette disappearing deeper into the burning cathedral, while sirens screamed overhead. Hours later, federal forces secured the underground ruins completely. National media called it the final collapse of the Moretti Empire. Political arrests spread nationwide afterward. Corruption networks fractured publicly. Survivors connected to trafficking operations finally came forward safely. The system changed, but not completely. Because even after the empire burned, Evelyn understood one terrifying truth remained alive beneath everything. Corruption never truly dies. It only changes shape. Several days later, exhausted federal recovery teams finished searching the cathedral ruins. Bodies were identified, weapons recovered, evidence secured. But one detail quietly unsettled everyone involved. Despite the destruction, despite the fire, despite the collapsed tunnels and burning debris, Dante Moretti's body was never recovered from the ruins.